All right, hi everyone. Dr. Vernita White here. I go by Dr. V, and I am your certified and credentialed coach. Well, I'm actually a transformational life coach, and I don't take that word transformational lightly. If you are new and you have not listened to any of the previous episodes, I am talking about my Stetson stories, where my time as a college professor, and I'm just doing like highlight moments. I've shared that I am operating in obedience by the Holy Spirit. Like, I've been avoiding this, talking about it, and I was like, well, I don't know exactly how to do it. And if I try to produce it, I am going to procrastinate even more. So if it's a little different, or if it may feel like I'm rambling, it's probably because I am trying to, I'm still processing in real time. You all are hearing me talk about this live, or maybe not. Maybe this is just for me. But if you hear it, that means I was supposed to send it to you. You may hear some life lessons if I don't stop and say them, like, oh, this was a lesson. I just hope that you hear as I process and kind of look back from where I am now versus when I was in it. At the time, it is still the last week of March in 2023. I started at Stetson in 2016, and we were separated, or when I finally realized what was happening, I was fired in May of 2021. So there are 5 years. Yeah. I was trying to see if I made an actual full 5 years. I did. And it was interesting, was right before I um, probably going into the year I was supposed to be promoted. But I won't say supposed to be, because God had other plans. And if you've been listening to me, I was like, I was missing signs along the way when he was like, tap out. And not tap out because I couldn't handle it. But I believe it was, you completed an assignment. Now I need you to step out on your own. But I wasn't hearing that at the time. And I'll get to that. But while I was there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make the most of it. So in the first two episodes, I kind of talked about like my first 3 semesters there. And this one, I am gonna talk more about, it was like the shakeup. After I came back from the retreat in Turks and Caicos, this was like I've never invested this much for personal development. And honestly, this was the year I invested the most money. This was when I started investing. So when people like look at my prices, and they wonder like if they don't see like what they're supposed to see, and this is at the time of this recording, all the things, or people are like side-eyeing why my investment is the where it was. Well, one, it took me a while to do some work on myself and my mindset to understand the preparation. And that's why also I lead with certified and credentialed. Like, you can life coach based on your experiences, and I think that's powerful. But I also have a life experience, degreed experience, and then I take this coaching serious, to where I invested time and money to learn the art and science of coaching, just like I took the time to learn the art and science of mathematics and the art and science of teaching, or the education profession, and then also the arts and science of leadership. Some people don't know that's a little master's degrees in between there. So, but I said all to say is not that because that's the only reason, but I've also invested high levels in myself. So how dare I not expect my clients to invest in them, because they're going to get high level service anyway. And yeah, it's not, and then plus I feel good about it because I can stand in integrity and say, oh yeah, it's 5 figures here, and it's not oh, I invested 5 figures, so I'm expecting you to invest 5 figures. No, because when I first started doing this, I was doing a whole bunch for free, because I was like, can I really do this like in this space? Even though I wouldn't tutor like math for free, but I was like, oh, I can help you, I can solve your problem. And then you can't see me, but I'm kind of like shrinking down in my chair, because that's how I literally was talking to people, being doctor. But because I'm like, well, this is a quote unquote new thing for me, I don't think that I'm good at that. Or speaking, I would speak for free a whole lot, not remembering or realizing all the years that I would speak at professional conferences across the entire country, multiple times a month and at these large organizations and, all of these things. and, and I think that's why I'm drawn to like a certain type of person because I understand it's like you can be brilliant in one area and broke down in another, and that broke down can take over your brilliance. Like, oh my gosh. But anyway, so I do like some people you see look at my prices and be like, oh my gosh. And I was like, you can say what you want, but I took that leap and I stand behind that. And honestly, I've had coaches still tell me that I charge too low at the time of this recording. All right, so I said to say I was like, where did I tell this story? I didn't. I shared it with my email list. So if you are, maybe it'll still be up by the time you hear it. But I had this resource where I talk about my personal guided retreat kit, and I put this together, and then I share like a story over 6 days, and you may hear some of this again. So I was like, where did I talk about this? And that's where I did talk about this. I wrote the whole little mini thesis in the email, and then I also did a audio note for people like me who don't like to read. Now I do read, so some people always get mad when I say that, but it's like I feel the same way when you say like, "Oh gosh, I hate math, I hate numbers," but you would try to figure out a budget or do your checkbook or whatever you need to do. So don't get wrong. Like if I could scam a room, the girl is well read. I just don't like to read. It's something that I have to make myself do. And like once I do it, it's like, okay, but it's not, oh, let me curl up with a good book. All right, I'm getting off topic. So I had invested in the business coaching, 5-figure investment, dropped out because of my own insecurities and all of the things. And then I was like, okay, let's work on yourself personally. Another 5-figure investment, boom. Now this is not, it's not like I had this money just sitting there, y'all. In a way I kind of did, but it wasn't like that. Like I felt every bit of that. And so after that, it was life changing, like I said on the other semester, in the other episode. And so now I'm coming back fully charged, renewed, all of these things. I'm a different person. Well, I'm who I am. I'm getting back aligned with who I'm meant to be. Not fully there yet. And I can say that now looking back because I still have work to do. But in that moment, I showed up as fully as me as I could at that moment. And I came back a new person and it was a shakeup. I mean, I came back a new professor and it was a shakeup. I I was like, okay, you've been playing around for 3 semesters. Get it together, get your attitude together, and you show up like you know to show up. You know this education space. None of these people have the credentials and the experience that you do. And so what I mean by that was I'm a secondary educator, meaning middle school and high school mathematics. I do have experience, and that's how I got the job because this was an elementary education department. But because I knew how to talk about my experience in the elementary education space without actually being an elementary teacher, I was good at remixing things like that. I mean, it was true. I spent time, but it was just not in the traditional sense. And I used it, and I believe, well, of course, God gave me the job, and so we're not gonna act like that. But there were some practical things I did, and that's something. Sometimes I think that people feel that they don't have to do certain things because, especially people of the Christian faith, God is going to show, or I mean, it's not even just Christians, people who believe like, oh, the universe is going to do this, or God is going to do that, which I believe all of that is true. But it's also, we're co-creators and there's some things that we need to do. So while I do believe God already had that job outlined for me, I still had to do the things or show up and say the things, and I hope that makes sense. I don't want to go into a tangent off that. All right. So here I am, and I actually worked in a school. There are a lot of professors in the education space that have not really worked in these K-12 schools. Maybe they did like maybe a year or did something adjacent. Even my dissertation chair, she loves back in the day, loves to talk about being in the K-12, and she's amazing. I mean, I can say that now. I've healed some things. She's amazing. I mean, she's always been amazing, but I can actually say it again, because I healed some things. Top person in one of our field in the field of math ed, and she got these K-12 schools unlocked in a lot of areas, but she never really like taught in a class. So it was kind of like she went from her degree and her doctorate to being a professor. And you can do that in a lot of fields, but not really in education. They actually want you to be out there but anyway. And some of these people that I worked with, they had been college professors longer than they had been in the K-12 school. So they were like so far removed. There was one lady there, she had been a professor since I've been alive, like no lie, at that time. She started when I was born as a college professor at that institution. I don't know if she was somewhere before that, but anyway. So I'm just telling you, I mean, I know I look young, but I'm not as young. Well, you can't see, but I'm not as young as you think. So these people had been in that space like for a long time. And here I am. I was like, no, I've worked in every level of K-12 education. I've sat with superintendents and principals and chancellors of schools and chief academic officers. And these are the things that I downplayed so long that I didn't come in with that power. I didn't come in knowing. It's like I wasn't a blank slate when it was time to be a college professor. So, but I had forgot who I was, what I had done, not realizing that or understanding that when I was working at the K-12, that this is pre-PhD. Okay. The way I understood curriculum and sequence and logic and how students learn, I created a whole plan for my mathematics department that people at the district level saw. And I was like, okay, this is something to do. And when I left to go get my PhD, and when I returned, my thing, how I created, I kid you not, was all throughout the district. And even one of my friends was like, yo, Glenn White, I remember when you did this when we were at the school. The district them used your whole thing. Look, y'all, I could have been like Robert Marzano chilling up in this piece had I known. But whatever. But that was a lesson for myself. Like after that point, I had never done anything just because anymore. And y'all can say what y'all want to say. Like, it's part of your job. No, it's not. It really isn't. So stop giving up all your stuff. I'm just saying, if they'll pay outside consultants for stuff, then you need to figure out a workaround to get your stuff. Especially if it was good, like myself was phenomenal. All right. So I said all that to say was like, you were somebody, do you recognize who you were well before you had this PhD? Now you have this PhD. You have this years of experience and you have a PhD in a content area. And this is no shade to anybody else's degree. But if you know, if you're in this space, you understand what I'm saying. This isn't like, oh, you got a doctorate in leadership or you got a doctorate in curriculum and instruction or diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's like you got in math. Somebody you got a science degree. When you get a concentrated degree, it's a different kind of air. Take it how you want, but it's a different kind of kind of thing. Think about it like, if people went to law school and it's like, but if you went to Harvard Law School, Georgetown Law School, and I'm gonna stop there because I don't know all the Yale Law, so it's kind of like one of those things. Say what you want. It's kind of one of those things. So here I am. And then I'm not at that time, not even 40 yet. Okay. That's another thing. You're this young and you've moved here, you gotten to this point. I don't get me wrong. There are some people, like I knew somebody who was a college professor at 25 because of the way in that field, you can go straight through and get your PhD without having actual real world experience and then go be a college professor because you're just teaching all the theory. So it wasn't so much about the age of being a doctor, but it was like, you're this age with this experience. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that time. I'm talking to y'all from right now, looking back, like I was that chick. I'm still that chick. So if you're in a space and you're in a new position, let's not forget everything that you carry with you. And that's what I did. When I have a one of the business coaches program I dropped out of, she's like, you write your badass list. And I tell my clients that there are times where I still like, whoa, hold on, let me add something, let me write this down, remember who I am. The other episode I talked about this quote I'm looking at. I am capable, I am wonderful, I'm chosen. First of all, I'm all of that without this natural stuff. Like just because God made me, I showed up, I was like that born, right? And then now I'm born this way. This is why it's so important, I believe, to just own who you are at your core. And then you're born brilliance. And then when the learned stuff is awesome, but put that on top. Don't lead with learn, but your learned brilliance. And I was doing that for a long time, leading with my learned brilliance. So it wasn't until I understood my born brilliance that my learned brilliance started really to shine. So when I showed back up after that retreat, both Vernita and Dr. Glenn White showed up. And it was a different person. And I think they recognized that because everything was all kind of sort of sweet in the beginning until I woke up. At that particular institution, it was it wasn't that we couldn't have successful faculty members on the tenure track to get tenure, but you had to be a certain way. Either you're going to be docile and do what they say, or it was going to be in the form of a lawsuit. And yeah, it was no room for in the middle. Like I'm going to stand my ground and be me. And that was me. I wasn't going to be quiet, but it was almost to the point where this is about to be some lawsuit type of stuff. But then I was like, is it worth it? So anyway, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So when I show back up, I'm getting stuff done. Lesson plans, all right, fine. We're gonna do this 16-week thing. Let me show up and do that. And I was part of this like faculty group. I had signed up to be a part of that to get extra support. I was looking for support everywhere I could outside of my department. That was another thing. I was like getting allies and stuff across campus. And it wasn't that I even knew these terms and things like that, but it was just I it was always like, let me make friends outside of the friend group. And that was just something I had from middle school and high school. Like in high school, I was a cheerleader. And so I had cheerleader friends and athlete friends, but then I was also in the magnet program. So I had my engineer friends and, all my nerd out friends. And then I was also part of these like social clubs, like the Italian Honor Society. So I had, that going on. And then like the kids who knew me at church that we went to the same high school. So it was just a lot. I was part of FCA. It was just a lot going on. So I never stayed with one group. I'm laughing now because it just hit me. I was like, I've never been that person. I'm an introvert. I love being by myself. But it's like if I got to be out here, let me just, float around. I'm a floater. Okay. And so I think looking back on it, I said, okay, that's how I eventually started showing up. And when I became a professor, and I think I did in my doc program too, but more so I could see when I became a professor, I was everywhere. And that I think that allowed me to stay longer or survive longer. I will say that survive longer because I didn't, if I got the life drained out of me from my department, I was still able to find life somewhere on the campus with other people. And I started learning some things and being strategic about some things and finding out how to work the university. So instead of just showing up to teach, and I remember I was so like, gosh, we're doing these kids a disservice. And I say that now because I don't work there anymore. So, and then the kids who are there, they're out. Maybe they're successful. I don't know. But I know we weren't doing them we weren't doing them a good job. We were doing a disservice to them. I'll say it that way. And there were things that weren't being taught, could have been taught, not telling the kids the truth. Like, you're not a great teacher. You're not. This is not for you, or maybe it'll be for you later. And I was one of those. I was a person who, because I didn't believe in you can be anything you want it to be. Not in that sense, to where I had a student who she had a learning disability, and she in my class when I taught the math class, I was like no calculators. And people can say what they want to say about that. But it's like if we're gonna still go to traditional K-12 where the kids are not using calculators, and of course now, and I'll get to this maybe at some point. I need to make a note about the whole teaching math thing. But at that time, okay, so stick right there. Whatever your beliefs and thoughts are, just listen. They weren't the kids in elementary school weren't using calculators. It was like I need you to know this math, the procedural and the conceptual. More so the conceptual at that point, and things are taught right. And I know people have this whole thing about Common Core, and I won't get into it, but it's like if you really understood what it was, then we wouldn't have these kids, struggling, how they're struggling right now. But whatever. So I was like, if this is where you're going, then you need to be able to think like a child. And that was part of my training and my doc program, you know, when I'm sitting there, because it reminds you, I didn't have an elementary background. So it was like, of course, I know how to do math, but to the last time I took elementary math was when I was in elementary school. I'm up here with differential equations and theorems and things like that. But if I wanted to really understand, I had to go back. So I'm sitting there in my PhD program with one of my professors, and they're talking about add, and I'm like, oh, carry the one. Oh, we don't carry the one. It's a whole new thing. We regroup and all that. I'm sorry, what? So taking it back, and it's like, yeah, the kids don't know that. You cannot approach the math with your current knowledge. And I'm like, oh, anyway. So that's what I brought to my students. It was like, look, you need to be able to, you can't just punch in some numbers. You got to be able to explain to a child what it is. And I was like, so no calculators. And I remember she went to the office and got their calculator thing put on. Well, she must be able to do this. And I was like, are y'all kidding me? So the rule passed. So then I was like, well, because I took this from K-12. Well, if you get to use a calculator, all y'all do, because it just wasn't fair to me. It was not fair to me. And so I was like, fine, everybody do. So then I adapted and changed the way I did my exams. But I was like, well, and then she struggled with reading. So would they allow her to do, like, she would go and read all of the assignments and record them and then would play them in the classroom. Now you can come after me for that. And that's cool. I'm glad she found a workaround to do all of that. But if anybody's an elementary teacher or know an elementary teacher, it was I was like, I don't think you're going to be able to keep this up. It's not like you're, because like this was a false setup. Right now you're only doing two subjects at a time. When it's time for you to do all of them, are you going to be able to prep at this same level for every single one of them? And so I would tell them, I don't think I don't think she needs to be a teacher right now. Maybe it's some other things, or I don't see it. She's a great person. She's wonderful with the kids, but that doesn't mean she needs to be a school teacher right now. And I know I got a lot of slack. Is that the word? Did not go over well with a lot of people, because they were trying to turn it into me talking about her disability. I was like, I'm dyslexic. So, or well, I have dyslexia. I am not dyslexic. I have that. But not one time do I go around and say, well, because of this. Now, maybe I should have. I don't know. And so I'm not saying that, oh, because I didn't get the service. It's not that. But it was like, I know what the real world for teaching is like. And then for new people, new students to become teachers, it's not like you're gonna get the easy classes. That's just not how it works. So you're gonna be trying to do all of that on top of dealing with students and behaviors and all of those things. Like, come on now, don't set this girl up for the okie doke. So this is not about her and her disability. Like, get out of here. Don't do that. And then in the same class, there were some, she was a sweet girl, but she just could not get up and talk and present. And you just got I've studied thousands of hours of classroom teachers, both personally and virtually and by watching videos. I told you I take whatever I do, I take it seriously and I go all in. It just took me a little longer with this coaching, but I'm better. But and so I could pick out who could be good teachers and leaders and things like that. Now, mind you, this is I didn't come in like this. I remember I went in like I was a blank slate. But when I was reminded of who I was, it was like, whoa, you know what this is. Your whole thing has been coach observations. You've been observing your whole dissertation was on this. You know this. Okay. So there were students who could not stand up and open their mouth or get so terrified. And if you're getting terrified in front of us and you're doing this in front of 7 and 8 year olds, and I don't get me wrong, kids can be brutal and ruthless. Shout out to all the elementary kids. People think middle school and high school kids are bad. Mm-mm. The little ones. It's the little ones. So I'm just saying and then it's like, okay, and then they go into the field. And that's one thing I will say that the university did a good job on, put them out there early. Just put them out there and weed them out. However, they would put them out knowing they should be weeded out, but still try to keep them. I'm like, my mom in church, she said, you got to separate the taff from the wheat. I mean, I know that's biblical, but she would say that, hey, taff, are you taff or wheat? Chaff or taff? Whatever, the things that look like wheat, but it's not wheat. Things that look like grass is not grass. It's a reason. Separate them out. But y'all act like all this is grass, and it's not. And then so I would get in trouble, like, and I would say trouble, like they would literally go tell the chair. Like I got sent, quote unquote, to the principal's office, which is the chair office, so many times, and I was like, I'm over this. But I said all that to say, I would say, look, y'all, this is not it. And then, did you not know, for a couple of like after they would go through it and graduate, because I got them at the tail end, principals would literally call the head professors and be like, we need y'all to come out here and work with such and such, work with such and such. We don't know what's going on. Have a conversation with such and such. Wow. Told y'all. Told y'all. And it never fails. Or you would get somebody, they graduate, get a job for the year, and then they be out. Like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, I told you. But hey, some people got to learn on their own. I remember, I'm taking it back. This was like my first year. I can't remember, it was 26, the fall or the spring semester, but it was one student. Everybody loved her, but she had this chip on her shoulder, like she was that chick. And in some cases, she was, But when it came to this math, though, I'm not one of your other professors. I actually know this. I know this stuff. I may not understand this culture thing that's happening at this campus right now, but this I know. And I remember she got a B. She made a C on my exam, but it's a B in the class. And it was like, I can't have the B. I can't. And it was this whole thing. And I think I ended up giving her A minus or something like that. And I'm gonna just be honest, at some point I just gave students grades because it was to protect my sanity. And that's just what happens. And if you're wondering why some people are the way they are in the workplace, even if they got college degrees and you still think they're not that bright, that's why. Because the professor probably was trying to save their sanity. And especially if you go to a private school, it is what it is. And that's, I think, it's another reason I need to be out, because I couldn't continue to do that. The profession was already in the toilet in most cases. So now I'm helping the problem. I can't. But anyway, so this student, I mean, horrible attitude about certain things and the way she was. And she met her match with me. She met her match with me. And I remember she was sending these long emails. I mean, it was bad. And long story short, she was not successful at probably three schools maybe, because they kept track of the kids, and the cohorts were so small that they were able, at least fit 5 years out, they were able to keep track of the kids, the students. And she reports like her attitude, she's not good, she's not this, she knows her content, but man, she cannot connect, it was brutal. And I think she finally went out of state somewhere and changed careers. But anyway, all that to say was like, I told y'all. So I'm going to wrap this up. But the shakeup came where I started owning who I was, and I was calling people out on certain things. And I'm not saying it was always the best thing, but I was like, I'd rather speak up and say this now versus go back to how I was. So, like I said, I still had work to do, but I enjoyed who this Vernita was prior to when I first showed up, because I started remembering and recognizing and then using the system of the institution. And once I started using it to my advantage, then all hell really started to break loose. So I hope you found a lesson in that somewhere. I am going to wrap this one up. I'm trying to keep a watch on my clock so I don't make these like hour-long episodes. So let me know what your thoughts were. If you have any conversations, if you have any questions about what I said that can spark a conversation later, put it down in the comments below. Let me know. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.